Well, after 3 Sundays away, it's good to be back with you. It's good to be home. But what a delight it was to be able to join our evensong choir from St. Mark's this month on the pilgrimage to England, where they sang each day in the hallowed halls of 2 ancient cathedrals, each for a week, in Lincoln Cathedral and then Durham Cathedral. Both those buildings are approaching their 1,000-year mark since they were built. Just astounding to worship in those places. And there was the keen sense of sacred in these places where we knew that we were following in the footsteps of countless souls across the generations in prayer and in making our pilgrimage. One hallmark of evensong is singing the Magnificat, the Song of Mary, a hymn of joy Mary sings when she visits her cousin Elizabeth when they are both unexpectedly pregnant. It could have been either woman's song. I like to think it was their song to be shared. My soul magnifies God. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. Our choir sang a different setting of this Magnificat each day, sublime offerings of praise meant to lift the spirits of those who are worshiping there and around the world via live stream. Lift our spirits in worship amidst the challenges of life. The choir would let their voices lilt and lift into the milieu of prayers across a millennium of time that merged into the timeless orbit of God's presence. And that's what we do here week by week, folks. Worship, if we stop to think about it, is a radical act of courageous trust that God is with us, present to us, with us on this journey. It's quite a thing to know that when we worship, we are connecting to something much greater than ourselves, something that stretches across centuries and around the globe, even to the heights of heaven, and draws us closer to what has been and what is and whatever shall be. The Magnificat's enduring beauty is in its capacity to hold the space for suffering and hope at the same time, using poetry that looks to God as the agent of change and the proponent of consummate peace. So here are a few of those poetic lines. God's mercy is on those who turn to Him, to God. God scatters the proud in their conceit. Isn't that when we think we have it all figured out? That's when we lose our way. God puts down the mighty from their thrones. God exalts the humble and meek. God fills the hungry with good things and sends the rich away empty. God remembers the promise of mercy made to the people of God. And the promise stretches all the way back to Abraham and Sarah and to our time and what is yet to unfold, what was and is and ever shall be. I can imagine the woman in today's gospel having been healed of the affliction that beset her for 18 long years. She might have just stood up and sung her own version of Mary's song. I can imagine a Christian woman in Palestine today singing her own version of Mary's song. My soul magnifies the Lord. Hope amidst the struggles. But it's also curious that we get this passage from Isaiah on the same morning. Isaiah, the quintessential prophet of hope amidst the struggles of life. There's a lot to unpack in this brief passage. It helps to provide some context, I think, because at first glance, it appears to say that to the people of God to whom the prophet is speaking, if you just do the right things in your life, everything's going to turn out okay. But we know that's not the case, right? We know that there is not some quid pro quo in God's calculus that ensures that everything will be okay if we just do the right things. No, there is something more to be gleaned here. This 58th chapter of Isaiah was written 6 centuries before Jesus walked the earth. And Isaiah was writing to the people whose parents and grandparents had been captured when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and hauled them off as slaves to labor for the empire. They were deported into a foreign land. They were forced to adopt cultural ways that were not their own, and they were bewildered by it all. Psalm 137 says, "By the waters of Babylon we sat down and wept." How could we sing a song of joy in a foreign land? The exile lasted 65 years. But then there was a change in rulers, and those that were still alive were allowed to return home. And the prophet Isaiah is encouraging them to hold on to some measure of hope as they try to find their way home, while also reminding them that God is their true touchstone, always has been, is now, and ever will be. Just remember that, and you'll find your way. If you take chapters 55 through 61 of Isaiah together, 2nd Isaiah, and it's well worth the read in that little section, you will discover that the exiles have taken a few too many cues from their oppressors in Babylon, and they have adopted self-serving behaviors in their own right. They are, what's in it for me? I don't care about you. And instead of making their way home together, they turn on one another. One hoards while another goes hungry. One takes the yoke off of his own neck and places it on another. They will never find their proverbial way home if they carry on this way. Yeah, sure, maybe it's human nature to do this, but Isaiah reminds us in no uncertain terms that it is not God's nature and it is not God's plan for us. Mercy and truth must meet together. Righteousness and peace must kiss each other. And they will, Isaiah says, even if we can't know exactly when or how that will happen. Now, that doesn't mean we stick our heads in the sand in some Pollyannish naivete, or we resign ourselves to the suffering. No, the weight of the world's burdens these days, the weight of the world's violence these days is a heavy burden, right? The litany keeps getting longer. Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, Myanmar, Congo, the streets of our own city right here. It's a lot to hold. What we do with that burden matters. And how we orient to it matters. Mary sang her Magnificat while pregnant with hope for good things to come, but even while her people were suffering terribly. And she leaned into that courageous trust that God was working in her greater things than she could ever ask for or imagine. The woman whom Jesus heals wasn't expecting to be freed that day from her bent over ailment. But what does she do right off? She stands up straight and launched into her song of praise for God. And Isaiah reminds us not to succumb to the ways of the world, pointing the finger, he says, or speaking evil in another's direction. Friends, in our world of rapid news cycles, social media barrages, sensational headlines, it's difficult to escape the snares of negativity. I get it. But what we do with the weight of the world matters. And I would suggest to you that Isaiah is not so subtly telling us that anything other than orienting to God is mere folly. If God is not the source of our concern and compassion for those suffering, if God is not the recipient of our interceding prayers for those suffering, if God is not the source of hope for our efforts and actions to relieve the suffering, then we will have lost our way. We will have lost our way. But if we orient to God in it all, Isaiah tells us, we shall be like a watered garden. We shall be called restorers of the breach. We shall take delight in God, singing our songs of praise and mercy and hope and justice and righteousness and peace. Friends, it is a Magnificat in our own right. Hope amidst the suffering. Can we make it our song? Can we make it our prayer? Can we trust that God is working in us greater things than we could ever ask for or imagine? May it be so. May it be so.